Thought Bubble Audio.
Look, up in the sky!
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Welcome to Beer with Geeks with Tim and Frank.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
I am Iron Man.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
You're a wizard, Harry.
A couple of guys with a couple of beers and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia.
Make it so, number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
Name the dog, Indiana.
Life finds a way.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Now sit back and crack open a cold one, because it's time for Beer with Geeks.
It comes in paints?
Shaken, not stirred. Great Scott!
I was way off. I knew it started with an S, though.
Hi, and welcome to Beer with Geeks, where two geeks geek out with beer. I'm Tim, and with me, as always, is my man who loves swinging about town. It's the one, the only, Frank Ramblings. How are you today?
Hey. I am
Hey, how
swinging
are you?
about the streets of New York City, and Shazam.
Frank Ramblings could be an like an alter ego name,
Maybe it is.
right? Like, maybe it is, maybe it isn't your real last name, Frank Ramblings, your real last name. No, it's just like you're like Frank Ramblings by day. By night, you are the clanging echo or something. I don't know.
The clanging echo.
I don't know. I was trying to think of something that they would name something like some stupid superhero name from the 1940s, and they wouldn't have. This is not a good name. Like, why? Why would you decide that like the Erect Lumbar? like why?
What even
Why?
is that?
I don't know. But you know those heroes exist.
I mean, yeah.
The Wizard, which is a real one.
Okay,
But, oh, wild. So
Wow.
so stupid.
Wow.
Yeah. What are you drinking today?
I am drinking a lovely New England IPA from the Stoneface Brewing Company. It is their full clip New England IPA. And it is a nice balance of hops and malt. It's pretty hoppy. I'm not going to lie. It's quite hoppy. But I enjoy it a lot. I like
hoppy
Stoneface.
drinking it?
Yes, yeah. I happen to be hopping while I drink it. Yeah, no, I like Stoneface a lot. They're my local brewery, and I have come to enjoy their beer quite a bit. So,
Nice.
full clip New England IPA.
Nice. Frank, I'm still working through cold. So I'm still drinking a tea this time. Switched it up, drinking a green tea mint.
Ooh.
Got to keep my breath fresh for you on the microphone. Because we have smell of microphones now. I
Oh
don't
yes,
know if you do
yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. These are smell
Technology
podcasts.
has come so far, episode to episode.
It's amazing.
I'm working on a cold, which I've had for a little while. So, but anyway, so I'm drinking some tea, as I'm wont to do. Sometimes I feel like you could link my cold episodes together from like season to season. Be like, oh, Tim's drinking tea, must have a cold.
Right.
Um,
It's part of the Tim
so
cinematic unit podcast.
That's right.
Cinematic
So
universe.
now you can mark it, whatever episode number it is. Up here starts the next cold wave.
Sure.
Drinking a cold tea. Actually, I'm drinking a hot tea for my cold. I'm not making much sense, Frank. It's madness out here.
It is
Madness out here.
The multiverse of madness.
Indeed, it is, Frank. Now, I'm so glad that you said that because, you and I have not actually had the chance to talk Spider-Man No Way Home.
That's true.
And so I know that came out in whatever month it came out.
December,
more than likely. But it was recently released for like streaming video.
Mm-hmm.
Just this week. And I said to myself, Frank, because that's what I call myself in my head.
That's
Frank. We should really talk to Frank about this.
So you called me and your. Okay. All right. That's something for you mentioned that to your therapist. Just
I was
okay.
you.
Yeah. I was you. Wow, That is a deep cut that no one will get.
In joke
That is a very
joke for us
from 10 years ago.
So yeah, so for context, in the movie Les Miserables, Hugh Jackman is Jean Valjean, and he goes to the bishop's house, and that bishop is played by none other than the original Jean Valjean from the Broadway production of Les Miserables. Whose
Colm
name
Wilkinson.
escapes me. Colm Wilkinson, thank you. And so there's this still of the movie where the bishop is just staring at Hugh Jackman, and the joke just became, "I was you."
Yeah.
And it just pops in my head every so often. So lovely. Such a great joke.
Great throwback. Wow.
Indeed. Yeah. Speaking of throwbacks, Frank,
Yes.
Spider-Man No Way Home is just nostalgia-ridden popcorn fun.
Yeah.
And you liked it. Tell me about your experience in this movie.
So you and Brent did a great job covering this movie because I couldn't be here when the movie first came out. So I was so glad to hear you guys talk about it, but I didn't get a chance to talk about it with you myself. And I absolutely adored this film. I mean, I'm so glad it's out on digital because I've been dying to rewatch it ever since it first landed. This movie made me laugh. It made me nostalgic. It made me sad. It runs the gamut, right? I mean, it does all the things that Marvel films do so well, and it did it with so much heart and so much I felt like I was watching. I feel like I learned that I have been watching one continuous Spider-Man story being told in the theaters for 20 years, and I didn't know it until now. Like, it was only made clear now that we've been watching one continuous story. And obviously, they didn't design it that way, right? The whole way through. But they capped it off with this movie in such a way that it made the whole thing from 2001 to 2021 feel like one big story that culminated in No Way Home.
I think that it's actually its largest strength, and I think its largest strength that every character actually has a purpose, and they're not simply there to be nostalgia. I mean, which is part of it, but they're there for narrative purpose, and that's to teach Peter something, and that's all Peter's. I think that, and it resolves dangling issues from each of their threaded stories, their web-threaded stories.
Hey.
And I think that is what I was kind of hoping for. And more importantly, well, I can't remember if I said this when Brent and I were speaking, but every Marvel Spider-Man movie is about Peter needing a mentor, right? Finding something like it's Tony, and then it's Nick Fury. And so by the time that we get, and then in some ways it's Doctor Strange a little bit here, but by the time the film ends, it is literally himself.
Yes.
That teaches it, like the final lessons that he needs, along with May. And I think that is what is so perfectly vital about the mentorship of Spider-Man through these things, where he was always searching for the father figure that he was absent, not realizing that two things. One, that it's the spoilers for like No Way Home, we're past that point, but he was searching for the father figure, not fully grasping that it's actually the mother figure in May that was like giving him the goods that he really needed, which I really liked. But then also himself, just the affirmation of himself, like at the end where he's like, I gotta tell you guys that I love you, and they're like, I know, they're like, we know, it's like, you're us, it's like, we know, it's okay. And so they're not just each other, there's friends. So there's Peter, it finally accepts himself, because he, that's something Peter Parker never does well, is accept himself for who he is. He's got pretty low self-esteem as far as people go. And I just really liked that. It was almost like one really long conversation in the mirror.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I love the way this movie takes Peter from high school kid to competent adult. You know, it actually, I mean, and we've seen him make this transformation over the last several years. Since we've been watching the Tom Holland Peter Parker grow up. But this was such a payoff to that. And we've seen him go through all of these stages, you know, with Tony and then Happy and then losing May the way he did and learning that lesson from the other Peters, that, you know, revenge isn't going to make you feel better, and that that he kind of learns from them, honestly, how important May is to him, by how important she is to them, and that making that sacrifice that he makes at the end of the movie to give up his relationships with everyone, for their own protection. He has grown so much from the sort of, he wasn't whiny. He wasn't like, power converters, like to that extent, but he was immature. He was an immature teenager, as you'd expect a teenager to be. And now he is, all the experiences that he's been through, from Civil War to Endgame to now, have really built up and have made an impact on him and have shaped who he is today.
Yep. I completely agree. And I like that there's this thread of it's always the Green Goblin, in no matter what multiverse or what version or what universe, it's always the Goblin that enacts this kind of change for Peter, because obviously it's Willem Dafoe's for Tobey Maguire, and then it's Dane DeHaan's in The Amazing Spider-Man, and then it's Willem Dafoe again.
Yeah.
In this one. So it's like the Star Treks, of Green Goblins. Like, it's good, it's bad, it's good, it's wonderful. So the next Green Goblin, I'm sorry. It's not gonna be good.
Sorry. Let's just get it out of the way so we can move on to another odd number, right?
Correct. Exactly. And I guess technically Harry counts as the second one.
Oh, yeah. True.
Shoot. That threw off my brilliant plan. Because Dane Hans was not good. But anyway, but I like that they've all learned a similar lesson about responsibility through the Green Goblin.
Sure. And
through the terror that he enacts in their lives in certain ways, because like he has taken from each of them something. Like he took Peter's innocence away in some way, and for Tobey Maguire, he took Gwen away in some instances for Andrew Garfield, and he took May away here. And so what I think is really powerful, you said this is not about revenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is vengeance streak in Peter in this one because of what Goblin has done. But I loved that it's Tobey Maguire's, or Peter 2, I guess. It's Peter 2's is what stops him at the end, because he's ultimately the maturest of them, and because he's the eldest, and so he's like the older brother who's like, nope, I've thought about this, been down this road. And like you think about like Spider-Man 3 with the symbiote suit, and he like attacks Harry in his house, and so like that Peter 2 has done stuff similar to what has come close to what Peter 1 is going to do. And this it's redemption of past actions for everybody. It's just a really powerful message. And like forgiveness is not about forgetting and forgiving it, but it is about it's not about forgetting, but it is about forgiving. And it's like it's not about moving on from that pain. It's about moving on and not forgetting the pain, but moving away from the pain. And I just think that's a good message, because the world that we live in, but also like a lot of young kids see these movies, obviously.
Of course,
right?
yeah.
And so I think it's really important to watch. I think it's important to watch Spider-Man really grieve, really feel, and then ultimately decide to walk away from that pain and choose life instead. That's very good. That's a good message. And I like that it's basically himself that gets him there. And so somebody that could have easily looked at, Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin and said like, no, he deserves it or whatever. But Peter 2 says like, I've thought about trying to cure him for a long time. That's the maturity of, he was ready to duke it out in the first Spider-Man movie in 2002. He was ready to fight, but maybe there were other ways to solve that problem.
He is learning. I mean, yeah, he literally learns with great power comes great responsibility, right? And they held on to that. They held on to that lesson until this movie. And I love that this time around, I can't remember if you and Brent mentioned this at the time, but this time around, they actually say it exactly the way it is in the comics. With great power, there must also come great responsibility, instead of with great power comes great responsibility, right? The actual verbatim phrase that is from the original comic is how Aunt May says it this time.
I actually didn't know that. I didn't realize that there was a paraphrase of it in the first one.
Yeah.
Because I know there's a paraphrase of it in the second one.
Yes.
In Amazing Spider-Man. And it's interesting that Garfield's Spider-Man says that, like, oh yeah, Uncle Ben said that, but Uncle Ben also says that your father had a saying.
Yeah, that's
and this
right.
is what it was,
That's right.
He believed this, he believed that you had the responsibility to do good if you had the power, whatever his thing is, and so, but I like the resonance of Uncle Ben, Aunt May. It's good stuff. It's really strong. People talk about, so much focus has been on Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire that I feel like Tom Holland's performance kind of gets left in the dust a little bit. And I think it's his best outing as Spider-Man, not in terms of just the film, but him as an actor and a character.
Yeah.
I feel like he part of it is the maturity of the character that has brought him to this place, but I think this movie gives him the biggest range.
Yeah,
it's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, this level of tragedy that he goes to. I mean, he lost Tony before, but this is a whole other level, right?
Yeah.
And this level of self-sacrifice. Saying goodbye to MJ and Ned, and then choosing not to disturb their lives because he thinks that they've that they're better off without him. There's a maturity to it. There's also a, hey, they told you what they wanted. There was a piece of me that was like, yeah, but they wanted you to. I mean, MJ really was like you'll find me, right? You'll find me. Like she was really effusive about it, and he kind of doesn't in a sense doesn't respect those wishes, but I guess he does it for the right reasons. So
that's the Peter Parker way, though. And I think that's what's so important about Peter is that he will bear the weight of the world on his shoulders. That's like there's something always very rich about a melancholy ending to a Spider-Man story.
Yes.
Because like that's how it starts out. Like he goes after his uncle's killer, but at the end of the day, his uncle has still died at the hands of his killer. It's something that he could have prevented. And so it's not to say that Spider-Man needs to be sad or morose all the time, but I think bearing the weight of responsibility makes a good Spider-Man story.
Sure. Yeah.
And this one, I mean, I feel like he doesn't fully let them go in those last minutes where there's the Spider-Man costume that he's putting on or whatever else. There's two things on the desk, and one of them is the coffee cup from the place that MJ works, the donut shop.
Yep.
But there's also the Emperor Palpatine Lego, which is the recurring motif from his time with Ned. And so I like that they are in some ways mementos. Maybe they'll come back around one day, but for for Peter, his story's not over yet because like he's accepted himself, but he's basically abandoned Peter Parker in favor of Spider-Man at the end of this movie. So he is in reverse of how it would normally go. It's not Spider-Man no more, it's Peter no more. He's taken off his like Peter, thrown that into the trash.
Yeah,
and
wow,
he's
how
just
about that?
Spider-Man. And so, but what I think is what's so essential to Spider-Man as a character is both of them. It's not, like they're not, I think a lot of superheroes really need to be both. Not all of them. Like Booster Gold is a character that is just who he is.
Sure.
Right? Like it doesn't matter about his secret identity. Wonder Woman doesn't really matter about the secret identity. It's just who she is. But even Clark Kent, to an extent, can get away with just being Superman because, like, they really are one and the same.
Yeah.
Kind of in a lot of ways. The goodness, maybe because Superman, like, is, the comfortable Clark.
Sure.
Just to be both. And so, but I think Peter spends so much time behind a mask, a full face mask, that he needs to take it off to really connect, to not get wrapped up in himself, which he can tend to do. And so I would like to see where they continue to go with this, because I think he needs to reclaim Peter Parker.
Yes. Yeah, and now he's in a position where, like, he's got a blank slate, right? And we can tell a whole new bunch of adventures, a whole new bunch of stories about Peter Parker in college or as an adult, or whatever, however they decide to take it. We've done the high school thing, and now we can move on to the next phase. And that can be with MJ and Ned or not. I hope it will be. I hope that they'll be brought back in some way, but they can go on, and he can maybe do a movie or two without them, and then bring them back into the fold, right? There's unlimited possibilities for him at this point.
I have a wish list item that I would like to see. So there's this thing where, like, so Ned has powers, right? And so, which is fun. It's fine. It's whatever.
Sure.
But he has this little moment with the other Peters, and he's like, oh, my best friend tried to kill me, and then, like, he died in my arms, blah, 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 that whole thing. And his thing is like, Peter, I will never become a supervillain and try to kill you, and this is when they know each other, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, but when Peter kind of rejects the notion of reestablishing those terms of friendship, that connection that he has with them, Ned's life is his own. But how interesting would it be for Ned to actually take a dark path without Peter, without the presence of that friend? And so Peter would actually be needed. And so maybe there is a confrontation between the two of them. And Peter knows, and Ned doesn't.
Sure.
Right? Ned is unaware of that possibility. And so when Peter does confront Ned, the supervillain, he's aware that the thought then becomes, is this Uncle Ben all over again? If I had reached out the hand of friendship in that moment again, would they have been safer, or would they have, like, done this, or would he have done this different path? That is the great philosophy of Spider-Man, right? The great debate, like what choice is better. And I would like to see that, because that would be right in line with stuff that happens to Peter all the time.
Absolutely, like the tragedy of Peter Parker, right? Like he is, and he's always sort of
the
down
right
on
choice is not always the right choice.
Peter. Or like no good deed goes unpunished. To put it another way, like, and that's sort of the thing that most often happens to Peter Parker. That's the kind of luck he has. Unfortunately, he does the right thing and still gets punished for it.
It's a bummer.
Yeah,
a bummer of a life. Were you excited to have Daredevil or Matt Murdock in the movie?
Oh, man, yes.
I can't remember if you watched Daredevil or not.
I did.
Can't remember.
I did. Yeah, I watched all of Daredevil. At some points, I was less enthusiastic about it than others, but I watched the whole thing, and I was thrilled to see him. And I just somehow didn't get spoiled on that, even though this was just a couple of weeks after. I didn't see it right away. I think I had to wait like a week or so before I was able to see it after it had been released. And this was right after Kevin Feige had been saying, "Oh, if Daredevil ever shows up in the MCU, it'll be Charlie." Charlie Cox, thank you, who plays him. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah, if that ever happens like that, that's cool that he's saying that. But didn't occur to me that he was saying it because he would be in this movie, and I somehow didn't see spoilers for it online. So I was thrilled to see him. I was like, oh my God, they actually did it. They actually did it. And that was before I had seen Hawkeye and saw that Kingpin made an appearance in that show too. So like really, really tight integration of Daredevil into the MCU continuity. So yeah, that was so cool. So cool. And I really like Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock and was when they made a reference to a lawyer, I don't know why it didn't occur to me, like obviously this is going to be the lawyer.
I think we still in our brains live in the world where everything is separated.
Yeah.
And you know, or we, like I said to somebody today, like we live in that, like, okay, the only superhero thing that we have is Nick Fury starring David Hasselhoff, and we got to watch it, otherwise we'll never get anything again. And so like when things like Matt Murdock is in the Spider-Man movie, you're like, no,
can't be.
Even though I've seen how many Avengers movies where they're all connected,
right?
And like this, but there's still like something very lovely when things come to coalesce and come together like that.
Right.
So I read an interview with Charlie Cox where he said he went incognito to the movie theater.
Oh, nice.
To watch with his wife, and his wife was filming him when his scene came on, and the theater was silent. Nobody reacted.
Yeah, I've heard that that was my experience. But
my theater erupted.
Really?
Yes, but I mean, I went to like the 3:00 on a Thursday. You know, so like,
those
are the people that they go because they don't want the internet ruining things for them.
Yes, and those are the people who are gonna get it and who are gonna appreciate it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Yeah, no, people. I didn't. There was not much reaction. Not any reaction really. And which was too bad. That excitement would have been cool. That sucks for him though, that he went and he was probably like, okay, here we go, here it comes. Nothing.
Nope.
Come on, guys.
It is a bummer.
Yeah.
But you know what? Maybe they'll discover the love that is Daredevil afterward. That's okay.
I hope so. Yeah. I hope someone told them and that they decide to watch the series.
Mm-hmm.
Now that it's coming to Disney Plus and everything.
I don't know if it's coming to. Is it coming to Disney Plus, or is it just available for purchase? I'm not positive about that.
My understanding is that it's coming to Disney. At first, it was announced that it was coming to Disney Plus in international markets, and I think afterwards it was confirmed that it's coming to Disney Plus in the U.S. as well. Unless I'm very much mistaken.
I mean, it's so very seldom that you are mistaken, so I'm not positive. But yeah, it's definitely. I think it's the best Spider-Man movie since Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, I agree. Man, when they, I mean, obviously we had heard that, you know, and seen photos, set photos that like Toby and Andrew were going to be back, but until I actually saw them, I was sort of like, I didn't let myself believe it until I actually saw them, and when they came through those portals, it was just like, oh my God, they actually did it. They actually did it. This is actually happening. And then they didn't have they weren't cameos by any stretch, right? They were integral to Peter's growth.
A lot of the people who were asked to come back, Willem Dafoe especially said he's like, yeah, I'd love to come back if it's worth my time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't want to be like, here I am 1 second and then gone. Like, I would love to do it again if it's a good part.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, it's a good part, baby.
Oh, do we have a part for you?
Yeah, you are literally the world's worst, and it's going to be great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I like that. I like that Toby and Andrew were just game, and it was a wonderful bonding experience for all of them because, like, they are in a rare tier all by themselves. You have 3 actors across different generations that have played Spider-Man, but they're also all liked.
Yeah.
Like what I find so fascinating, that they are all well-liked Spider-Man. For the, like, there are obviously naysayers for, groups in each one, but like you have these three guys who have different takes on a character because it's a good, nice, versatile character, but that they can all present something different, and not just because they've been in different movies, but because because of their experiences and their age and their and it's just wonderful to have them all back again. I read an interview where Tom Holland was like really jealous of Andrew Garfield's costume because his had zippers in the gloves, so he could take them off to use his phone in between like filming, and Tom's doesn't have that, so he had to use his nose to like poke the screen whenever he needed to use his phone. And it's like the little things like that just make me laugh. I just I like that kind of thing. What I like about their entrances, I can't remember if I said this with Brent too, is that like Andrew comes through as Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And
Tobey
Maguire comes through as Peter.
Yeah.
Because they're both sides of him.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important, like for Peter 1's growth, is that it's both. It's not just Spider-Man that shows up, it's Peter and Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. I think that's like, it also tells you like where they are emotionally in their growth as characters. That like one is coming through as Spider-Man and one is coming through as Peter. This is where they are in their lives. And I like that. I like that a lot too.
Yeah. It was just such an like emotional ride, in really in the best way, and I was thrilled. I was thrilled, and I just couldn't believe it was such a treat. Like that's what it felt like, such a treat to get to enjoy this movie, and like I feel happy and like just so. It was so satisfying. It was just so satisfying to see an end for all these characters, and I always felt like the Andrew Garfield films were not my favorite Spider-Man films. I didn't particularly like them, but I never had a problem with him. I
agree.
Always liked his Peter. I never had a problem with him. The movies weren't my favorite. The Tobey movies, the first two. Absolutely. I mean, not a controversial opinion. Like, I think that they're fantastic, Spider-Man 1 and 2. And The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, not as much. But I'm so glad that Andrew got this payoff, because I think he deserved it. And Tobey, certainly, it was a thrill for me because he was, my Spider-Man in my teen years. And that really was important to me. I was such a fan of those movies as they were coming out, that to have this payoff for him was huge. So that's the thing that I felt most satisfied with was the payoff for the legacy characters, and a satisfying arc for the current Peter, and that he's set up for adulthood in a way that feels earned and feels like a good jumping off point for whatever films come after this.
Yep, I completely agree. Well, Frank, tell the people where they can find us on the interwebs.
Our website is beerwithgeeks.com. You can also find us at thoughtbubbleaudio.com. That's the network where this show and many of our others live. Our email address is beerwithgeeks@gmail.com. We're on Twitter at beerwithgeeks. You can support us at patreon.com/thoughtbubbleaudio. At any dollar amount, you can support this show and all the other shows on the network and help us keep making them. You can also support us by subscribing in any podcast app and rating and reviewing us in any podcast app, particularly Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Well, Frank, that was lovely. Well said, as always. And it was great to talk to you, my friend. So, until next time, cheers.
Cheers.